Hi, everyone. Welcome to Value. So today we talk about Bitcoin and the stocks around it. So Bitcoin, as you know, has been dropping recently, and it's at 22,791, dropping as much as dropping down to 21,000 earlier today. So it's dropped a lot. The biggest question probably on everyone's minds is basically should we be buying Bitcoin or the stocks around it, like say Microstrategy that holds a lot of Bitcoin. It dropped 25% yesterday, or like Coinbase, who facilitates an exchange of crypto, which is there much business in crypto right now? You know, particularly if you're facilitating it, are people really wanting to be getting in and trading this stuff? That's the kind of the difficult questions right now. Which like it's all up in the air because every time it drops, you're convinced that it's the last time it's going to drop, but then it drops more. So we got to the end of 2021, basically where the peak was for this, about 66,000 or so. Then it drops to like 38,000, takes, it kind of rises up again, gives a lot of false hope to 47,000, and then massive falls to 29,000. You think that's the bottom, but now it's just at a recent fall again, and then it's at around 22,000 as low as 21,000 earlier on. Like the biggest question is this the end? And really, no one really knows because it's an really unpredictable asset. The type of market we're in just makes it very difficult to predict these things. It has fallen a lot, so that's the one thing. A lot of people that are looking at it and thinking, there's potentially a bargain to be had, but the question is, will it continue to dip more? And I mean, if you look at the whole history of Bitcoin, obviously there's been lower prices in the past, so there's potential it can drop some more. But if you look at back in 2020, basically a lot of things are falling back to 2020 prices, and it was around 19,000, so potentially those areas might be the support for it, and potentially that might be the time to be looking into it. Right now at 22,000, it's probably not at the bottom level of support, but who knows. So it's just more or less guessing around these kind of historical prices and where it might support around these areas. Potentially you can just like dip in, like if you go like, oh, actually 22,000 is pretty low, you expect in a year's time it's going to be much higher, then it's worth buying some, and then just like slowly drip feeding into it every few weeks or months. So say like if you had $1,000 and you go like, I'm going to buy $100 today, and if it continues to drop, I'll buy another 100, then another 100, then another 100, or every month or so you just buy a same amount and you just average over time. Because when Bitcoin drops, it drops a lot, but when it rises a lot, and it never kind of does, like, it never goes down slowly, it never goes up slowly either. It all happens within a very, very quick time frame. So hence why you got to take actions that kind of don't require a lot of like quick decision making or a lot of panicking or a lot of FOMO. If you're in investing for a longer term, you need to build systems that protect you from your own emotions. That's basically the whole aim of everything. If you can take the emotion out of it, then you can kind of see things clearly. You can take approaches that kind of don't require a lot of thinking because you've already thought way ahead of it. Like in terms of Bitcoin, you can always drip feed in, because if you believe the price is going to be much higher, which a lot of people do, and I mean, we are in a very tough situation in the markets right now. So, and the whole fundamentals of Bitcoin is a lot of people, it's quite an established kind of like an asset in people's minds that it's the digital type of gold. So I don't think that goes away anytime soon. So potentially that, hey, if it doesn't go up in the next few months, it probably will in the next few years. So if you've got the time to wait, then it's worth buying some and then drip feeding into it over time. Regarding if it's the lowest it can go, it might go much lower. These things are very, very hard to predict, particularly in this type of environment. Yeah, like how about MicroStrategy? Is this a stock worth buying into? Like, this is a stock that's at least half of it's based on its Bitcoin value, and another half is based on its I think it's its consulting business value. So yeah, like that's kind of an option where you kind of have a bit of a diversification between the two. And yeah, like generally when Bitcoin goes up, MicroStrategy goes up. When it goes down, MicroStrategy follows the same way. So it's in terms of how correlated it is very well correlated with Bitcoin. Or you can always buy like Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which yeah, like does a very similar thing. And another one I think a lot of people will be interested in is Coinbase. Like I think from the first quarter and how they kind of perceived everything, I think it's a bad idea to be buying into Coinbase because with the volatility and the drop of Bitcoin, it's unlikely you're going to see a lot of people wanting to buy in it anytime soon. Or at least doing too much buying. Like I think people will buy a little bit out of curiosity to buy the dip. But usually I think when crypto is going upwards, a lot of people FOMO into it and they all want to buy into it, and that's when Coinbase sees high, revenues, and they make a lot of profits. But what they've been seeing recently is their revenues have been dwindling, which means their profits have been dwindling, and they're actually not making money. If in some sense they could lose money in the next quarter. So that's the risk of Coinbase. And I think out of all situations, Coinbase is probably the worst one to be buying into until you see an uplift of crypto. I don't think Coinbase is a go because they rely on the volume of cryptocurrencies traded, and the volume basically isn't there right now with these type of things. Yeah, so especially with crypto down, Bitcoin down, basically all cryptocurrency that are down. So given that, I don't think it's looking too positive for the time being, but it means you can also keep it on a watch list, and in basically there's a lot of bargain hunting to be doing. So, and I think also like there was it was like Coinbase, they released when someone read your terms and conditions, they're like if anything happens to Coinbase, potentially their creditors could actually take your crypto, which means it's a vulnerable spot. Though correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I remember reading something on Coinbase about that. So then there's also a risky part about that, and I think if a lot of people read about that, then a lot of people aren't going to trade with Coinbase. They're going to trade on another platform like Binance or something. Which is even worse. So I would say I'm probably expecting Coinbase's next quarterly to be really, really bad. That's my view anyway. So I don't see a lot of positives buying into Coinbase right now. Like given the current pricing, it seems like a lot of risk to be buying in. If the price fell a lot, then potentially it's worth the risk. But right now, the risk just doesn't seem to be justified, particularly given this type of climate, particularly with how Bitcoin is not doing too well. When things do come back stronger and Coinbase is selling at a much lower valuation, that potentially is the time to be buying into it. At least that's how I'm seeing it anyway. And I think a lot of people are going to be watching crypto and seeing that it's falling. They're going to be a little curious around, is there any bargain hunting? Which is normal, you see something dropping, you think there's some bargains to be had, which, given the current market, things are looking very grim, particularly with inflation, hiking, interest rates getting hiked up, which doesn't bode very well. I would say, in this case, probably doing nothing is probably the best, most productive, even profitable action to be taken, because you don't know how much Bitcoin or other cryptos could be dropping in this period. So I think it's worth being on the sidelines until you have a clearer picture, particularly with how inflation's going, and in waiting for crypto to stabilize as well. Because though you don't really get a lot of opportunity to see it stabilize, it either drops this much and then in the next week it just like boosts just as much. So there's not a lot of type of time to think about these things sometimes. Hence why sometimes you might have a strategy where you just buy in a little bit and then just like dip in every time it comes down, and just keep the cash on the sidelines, just so that you can actually keep averaging down. If it keeps going down, that's if you're passionate about these things and you think it's worthy. If you don't know much about it, then basically you can take that approach. Or you can just wait on the sidelines and wait for the pricing. There is always a point where something is so cheap that it's just impossible to resist. At 22,000, it's not that pricing yet. Basically, as we saw in the 2020 pricing, basically $19,000. That seems like a really, really good deal. Though at 22,000, I mean, if you're in it for the long term, based on what everyone else thinks, like particularly with all the analysts that are around it, the experts around, crypto, if you want to believe what the experts say, because I mean, a lot saw, like $1 million for Bitcoin by the end of the decade. Which is, in 8 years' time. So potentially you could look at it and go like, oh, actually, if it's going to be $1 million, then, there's a lot of upside. And if it doesn't get to $1 million, it still means that generally in the longer term, it's going to be worth more anyway. So here, that presents itself as an opportunity for anyone that's got the time to wait. So overall, it seems like like an interesting time we're in, which presents potential opportunities that that sometimes you look at it and you go like, yeah, this is an opportunity if you have the timing. But if you can't wait too long and you only have like a period of like a few months or, half a year to a year, then you really got to like think about this in terms of these decisions, because sometimes these investments take a long time to really, really get moving. And you don't want to be caught in a situation where you need the money in 6 months' time, you buy something and it drops and you're forced to sell at a loss, which is the worst situation you would want to put yourself into. So that's why you want to think about these things and only do it if you have the time. So in terms of like buying Bitcoin itself, like it seems like an alright decision, Microstrategy, but I would say stay away from the exchanges, because exchanges, they're not likely to see high volumes that they saw a long time ago, like last year or the year before. I think the volume that's going to be traded in crypto is probably not going to be as high as it used as the peaks, and hence why I think like Coinbase isn't going to make a lot of money. The valuation at 13 billion likely drops a bit lower, and basically the risks of buying into it is just probably too high to make it worth it. So I'm looking at it and I'm going, probably not worth the consideration, because the risk is probably doesn't justify the reward that you would probably get out of it. So there's a bigger chance, put it this way, there's a bigger chance it will go from 13 billion and half to 6.5 billion, then it would go up to like 13 to 18 billion or 26 billion, so you've got, there's a bigger problem of it halving. Well, there's a high risk that it will halve rather than go up 50% more, unless they post some really, really good results. But I think you can tell by just watching the market and how things are, and I'm looking at my own patterns and how I act, and I don't really buy as much or do anything as much. I'm just watching the markets, just baffled that these things are happening. I'm still doing a lot of research, not as much as I used to do, but that's just how the markets are. They don't seem that motivating. You could find something good, or you could do this, and then it still goes down, which it's just because inflation's high, interest rates are going up, which is generally bad for the market, and basically, it's a hard game to win right now. So I'm looking at Bitcoin and going, it's possibly it's an opportunity, but you just really have to time it and go like, there's really no rush. Like, you're better off just kind of, easing yourself into the market over time, because I don't think things are going up anytime too soon. Like, things, there's always a short boost. Like, things will go down a lot, and then you'll be like 2-3 days where it's really, really good, and you think the market's changed, then it goes down again, and then it's like, it goes down more than before. So that's why you want to just be very cautious and worry about. And yeah, like, I think you've got enough time to just look at it, think about it, watch the markets. Interest rates are still going up. That's probably in my kind of thoughts. The key thing to watch for, like, is like, if interest rates keep going up, market keeps going down in general, because that's kind of how people react. Because firstly, there's less money heading to the market, and that's a really big key indicator of how the market performs. Less money into the market, less likely with higher prices. So when the Reserve Bank, federal, basically when the bank, when their target is lowering inflation, the other side effect is they're actually lowering stock prices too. Like, they're lowering all prices, which is kind of, not great. But it's the reality of those decisions, where they are tackling high inflation, and at the same time they're also tackling the stock prices. So that's where it's really hitting everyone. And until, like, interest rates stop going up, like, it's going to be a tough market to be in. So like, and these days, institutional investors own a lot of Bitcoin as well. They're getting into it. They're diversifying into it as well. So basically, when they're selling stocks and Bitcoin now. Where a long time ago, it just used to be the Bitcoin crowd in Bitcoin. Now it's like Bitcoin and stock investors all in one, and even, anyone in general is getting into it. And when things are tough, like, a lot of people sell, so then it gets very, very highly correlated with the rest of the market. And that's what we're seeing right now. I think right now it's best to, like, watch from the sidelines. And if you do want to get into it, then probably just, like, drip feed your, and just buy a small portion and buy a small portion. Don't get all in there all in once, because I mean, it always feels like the easier decision to just buy all at once and just wait. And then just take the thinking out of it. But, like, particularly in this market, we don't know where the bottom is. Always leave room to be buying. Until then, good luck investing, everyone. Got any questions, post below. Until next time, see you later.